All right, so welcome to the lesson on modes and scales. Let's get started by talking about the modes of the major scale. Now, first of all, we're going to do this in the key of C. Actually, we'll try doing a couple of different keys here in this chapter. I'm not going to bother to go through the scale. You should already know this is the notes of the C major scale, and you should already know a fingering for it. Basically, all a mode is imagine that my hands were linked together like this, almost like, imagine like it was a stick, like a ruler, right? And you see that I mashed down all of these notes. If I were to lift up and I just move to another note, see how I mashed down another set of notes, and another set of notes, and another set, and another set, so on and so forth. Imagine I just had like a stick that I could put down the keyboard and it mashes these notes at a certain length, right? A mode is going from the scale from one point of the scale to that same point an octave higher. So I'm going from the root to the root. Here I'm going from the second to the second, third to third, fourth to fourth, fifth to fifth, sixth to sixth, seventh to seventh, root to root, or one to one. Okay? So all a mode is starting that scale on a different note other than the root and going all the way up the whole octave until you hit that note again. Now, here's the catch. You only use notes from that scale. So notice I didn't put in like say something like that in F sharp, right? It's all just white notes. So if I was in the key of G, for instance, it'd be that. Okay, there's my G major scale. And then the next mode, the second mode up, would be this. See, I'm just moving the notes up one note at a time. Okay. All right, so now, each of these modes has a different name, and we call them the Greek modes, and these are different names, different Greek names that you can apply to these modes. Now, if you want the history of the modes, I'm sure you can get online, go to Wikipedia or whatnot. There's probably like tons of different explanations of the history of the modes. We're just going to talk about how to actually start to use them in our playing in this lesson. All right, now if you've downloaded the sheet music for this, you see that at the very top it says modes of the major scale. And you see from C to C, this is called our Ionian mode. From D to D, or the second mode of the scale, this is called Dorian. E to E is Phrygian. F to F is Lydian. G to G is Mixo-Lydian. A to A is Aeolian. B to B is Locrian. And then C to C is Ionian again. Now, obviously, the Ionian mode is the same thing as what? The major scale. Okay? Now, the next part of confusion for students is the Dorian mode in the key of C or C Dorian. Okay, so let me say that again. So the Dorian mode in the key of C is when I play the C major scale starting on D and going up to D. So I play the C major scale starting on the second degree of the scale, all right, and going all the way up to the second degree of the scale up here, all right. That is the Dorian mode in the key of C. In order to figure out what C Dorian is, we have to think, okay, it's not the C major scale. We need to think, what is C the second scale degree of? So what major scale has C as the second scale degree? Well, it would be B flat. So we need to do a B flat major scale starting on C. And it's these notes. C, D, E flat, F, G, A, B flat, C. Right? So that's one way in which you could figure out the notes of the mode. Now, that works perfectly for certain modes, especially like Locrian, because Locrian is the seventh degree of the scale. So really all you need to think is, all right, well, if I want to find B Locrian, I go up a half step and I play a C major scale starting on B. But what if I wanted to find, say, F Locrian? Well, what I'd have to do is go up to G flat, right, and start that scale on F. So if I start a G flat major scale starting on F, that is my F Locrian mode. Now the Locrian mode is the seventh degree. It's the seventh mode of the major scale. So I'd have to say, okay, well, F is the seventh note of which major scale? And as we just said, it's the seventh note of G flat. Right? A little confusing, but as you start to work with a little bit more, it gets a lot easier. Now, that's one way of figuring out the modes, is to think, well, what scale degree is it? The other way is to figure out how is the mode changing the major scale. So, if we take a look here, here's D Dorian. Let's think, how is this different than our D major scale? Well, what we're doing is we're flatting the third and the seventh notes of the D major scale here, all right? So if I take any major scale and I flat the third and the seventh notes of the scale, that gives me a Dorian scale. So let's do it in the key of G. Here's G major. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1. If I flat the third and the seventh notes of the scale, I get this. Okay? So you want to commit that to memory. Flat the third, flat the seventh, that's your Dorian scale. Phrygian. All right, how is Phrygian different? Here's E Phrygian. How is this different than my E major scale? Well, it is flatting the second, the third, the sixth, and the seventh scale degrees. So if you flat 2, 3, 6, and 7, that gives me a Phrygian mode. So let me do it on C. If I flat the second and the third, all right, and then I flat the sixth and the seventh, there's my C Phrygian mode, okay? My C Phrygian scale. Now, notice this is not Phrygian in the key of C. This is C Phrygian, all right? Lydian. Lydian, all right, is where you sharp the fourth, see? You sharp 4. Mixolydian is where you flat the seventh. Aeolian is where you flat the third, the sixth, and the seventh. And Locrian is where you flat the second, the third, the fifth, the sixth, and the seventh. Okay? So let's go through that again. Ionian is just your major scale. No sharps, no flats. Dorian, flat 3 and 7. Phrygian, flat 2, 3, 6, and 7. Lydian, sharp 4. Mixolydian, flat 7. Aeolian, flat 3, flat 6, flat 7. And Locrian is flat 2, flat 3, flat 5, flat 6, and flat 7. Now, let me tell you the modes that you're going to find yourself using frequently. Obviously, the major scale, you're going to use that a lot. The Dorian mode, you're going to use a lot, all right? And Aeolian modes. Those are the two modes that you're going to choose, usually one of those two modes for your minor chords. Okay? Usually if your minor chord is a 1 minor or 4 minor, you're usually going to choose that Dorian mode, right? Or a 2 minor chord, so 1, 2, or 4 minor, you're going to choose a Dorian mode. And if it is functioning as a 6 minor chord, a lot of times you'll use that Aeolian mode. All right. Phrygian, yeah, you don't really use Phrygian all that much because Phrygian is a very unique sound, like. Okay? So now you will use it, but it's just not as common. Lydian, you'll end up using Lydian a lot, especially on major 7 chords that have a sharp 11. So if you see a major 7 chord with sharp 11, then you can use your Lydian scale. Mixolydian, got to know your Mixolydian scale. That's what you use over your dominant 7th chords, okay? You can almost always use a Mixolydian scale over a dominant 7th chords. And then finally, your Locrian scale, you can use over a minor 7 flat 5 chord, all right? There are some limitations or some avoid notes, but we'll talk about that a little bit later, okay? All right, so anyway, that is your basic modes of the major scale. Now, in the next chapter, I'm going to talk about how you can go through and practice each one of them with some chords in the left hand. So we're going to do some more work on these modes. So I'll see you in a minute.